Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which consists of 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or just storytelling in general. And this morning, the pregnancy insomnia has me up way earlier than breakfast. And so we'll see how well my brain functions this morning, but I'm up, so I'm going to go ahead and get into my 6 things with y'all. So, number 1, on this early morning, I wanted to just share an update on the revisions I've been doing on the early books in my series. I finished going over book 4 a few days ago, and it was really so much fun. That was a book that I had looked forward to for a long time before I wrote it, and then really had a lot of fun writing, and it didn't require a whole lot of work. It was mostly just some very small tweaks, and since I'm changing a few characters' ages, there were several references to that I needed to change, but overall it didn't really need too much, and so it went pretty quickly, and it was just really fun to go back over it, and the characters just go through a lot of very interesting things in that particular story, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed that one. So glad to get that one finished with. And tomorrow, on the 1st of the month, I'll be starting on revisions for book 5, Gestern, which is another one I haven't revisited in a really long time, so I'll be curious to see how it holds up. Number 2, since I finished going over Reversal Zone a few days early, my deadline was the end of this month, I decided that it would be beneficial to work on getting Intoxication, which is book 9, the next one that's going to be coming out, by getting that one ready to send off to beta readers so that they can be reading it while I'm working on these last couple of revisions, and then hopefully that way I can be ready to actually start revisions on it and getting it ready to publish as soon as I'm done with these revisions. So my intention when it came to getting it ready was that I wanted to first rewrite the opening, because back when I first wrote it, I felt the opening was very weak and kind of boring, and I had an idea for something different that I could do that I thought might work better. So I thought, I'm going to take these 3 days and just rewrite that, and since that's already something I know I want to do. But then when I went and actually looked at the opening, I was like, you know what, this actually is not that bad. It's not like, I don't know, things always look different with a little bit of distance. And I also started having some doubts about the opening I was considering, so I thought, well, I should probably just leave it and just mention it to my beta readers, mention that here's how it is now, here's an idea I have to change it, like, which do you think? Like, is it fine as it is? Do you think what I have planned would be better, or something else entirely? So anyway, so instead of rewriting the opening, I decided just to go over it like real quick. I'm not doing any serious editing. There are a lot of unnecessarily long and complicated sentences in it that need to be fixed. I'm not messing with any of that right now. Just kind of refamiliarizing myself with the story, because it's been a while, and just fixing a few like really basic typos as I go. So I'm hoping to get that out to a few readers in the next day or 2. And I'm really enjoying going back over this one. It was also there were several passages that were really fun to write, and it's one that I feel like went pretty smoothly, other than possibly the opening. I feel like the rest of it, the plot worked out well, and it really adds a lot to the series, I think. So really excited about this one. Number 3, my mom has been bringing me some of my old boxes from storage, just kind of gradually over time, so I've been going through those. And it's just a little bit of everything. There's like old dolls, old magazines, letters, just different things I made, like so many different things. Excuse me. And so there was one box I went through yesterday that had a lot of different things in it, but one of the main things was a lot of my really old writing, and most of that was from the time when I mostly wrote by hand because I didn't have consistent access to a computer, so this was a very long time ago. And it was just so funny looking over some of these, and some of it was stuff I'd printed out. Among these things was what I guess you could consider my first book. I feel like that's a little bit of a nebulous category, but there was a series of mystery stories I wrote when I was in my teens called The Tucker Twins, about a set of twins who solved mysteries. And so the first of those books was printed out in a folder, and also in that folder was just like other stories I'd started that were written by hand, and like notes for stories I was going to write, and just all kinds of things. And one thing I found too was a children's story that I wrote and illustrated for a young friend of ours years and years ago. And that's pretty interesting because I can't draw. And I've always wanted to draw so bad, and I don't try anymore, but I used to try actually. And so I wrote this little poem for this children's book, and it probably took me like an hour or less to write the words. And it's little rhyming story. And so I had this sort of poem ready to go, and then it took me like a year to work on the illustrations. And I drew them and then scanned them in and colored them and then scanned them and added the text. And I eventually printed it out, laminated the pages, and kind of did a ring binder thing for our friend. And so anyway, the book was called The Princess and Her Baby Brother. And it was just a story about a lonely princess that really wished and prayed for a baby brother, and then she got one. It was just, sweet little story. So anyway, I found, and it was, the pictures I think were a valiant effort, and I did work very hard on them. And the one thing I really am proud of, I was showing the book to my husband last night, and of course he's so sweet, he thought it was amazing, and he's like, you should get it published, the drawings are so good. I'm like, no, they're not good. But I did work really hard on consistency throughout, so like having the characters look the same, and like anytime the princess is in her bedroom, I had this like elaborate bed that looks, like the same in every time we see her in her room. So stuff like that I worked really hard on, and even looking back I was like, okay, well, that was hard and that was pretty good, I guess. But anyway, it's just funny to look back on. And I'm keeping most of it. Like there's a couple things I was just like, this really is pointless. It's like 2 stories, or I'm sorry, like 2 pages of some obscure silly thing that never went anywhere. So I'm not keeping stuff like that. But like obviously the Tucker Twins and this children's book and stuff like that, I'm keeping all of that in the folders that were in there. So this is fun. I'm sorry, excuse me. It's very fun to look back over some of that stuff and just take a little walk down memory lane. The number 4, it's been really fun as my girls get older. I would say really just like in the past few months to start seeing them really use their imagination when they're playing. Because before, I would say when they played, it mostly consisted of just like, building things, setting things up. Just, I don't know, just they wouldn't really have like characters and stories and, people experiencing things or any of that. And that's really blossomed in both of my older 2 in the past few months. And it's so much fun. I love listening in on their playing and hearing what they're saying, because they're both so different. They develop different things at different rates. And so a lot of times they'll kind of be growing in the same area at the same time, even though they're different ages. And a lot of times they won't, but in this they do kind of seem to be on like parallel I don't know, learning curve or whatever. And even just yesterday I was my 3-year-old was playing quietly in her room, or, well, she was supposed to be playing quietly in her room during rest time, and she was getting kind of loud. So I talked to her on the baby monitor and said, hey, remember to play quietly. You're being kind of loud or whatever. And she answered back, that wasn't me, it was Minnie talking. Her Minnie Mouse. So I told her, no, it was you, but everyone, including Minnie Mouse, needs to be quiet. So nice try. But just the other day, they were talking, and they always have the rule that when we go somewhere in the car, they can bring one stuffed animal, and they can't take it in the store or wherever we're going, because I know that would just inevitably mean it gets lost, and that would be heartbreaking for everyone, whatever it is, because they love all their stuffed animals. So the rule is they can take one animal only in the car. So they had my oldest, Violet, she had whatever her animal was, and she was playing with it. And I hear her talking, and she goes like, yes, these are my children, and I'm their mommy. And she was telling me whatever situation they were going through. I don't remember. It was something very dramatic. And then she said, well, they just don't have any daddy though. And I said, well, everyone has a daddy, so they must, maybe he's at work or something, like our daddy is. And she was like, no. And so she thought for a minute, and then she said, let's just pretend that their daddy is dying. I was like, let's not pretend that. That's very sad. Why can't their daddy just be at work? And she's like, no, I think we'll just pretend that he's dying. Like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? And just so many things. Like, they'll play where, yeah, like one of them is the mommy, and one of their toys is the baby, or their games are always like, obviously revolve around things they know. So their toys will be sad because they're missing their mommy, or they're going to go to the store or the park, or, whatever, things like that. But it's just really sweet to see that developing in them. And Violet even knows the term where she'll say, I'm just going to use my imagination for that. And I love seeing that come out. I always loved that with my siblings when I was growing up as well, just listening to them play and hearing them use their imaginations and make up their own stories. So it's just one of the many fun parts of having kids around. Number 5, currently reading. I don't have too much to say because I'm still reading David Copperfield. It's very long. But I did find that it is apparently due back at the library in about a week, and I can't renew it. So I've got to finish up. I think I'm about halfway through. So I need to double up and start reading some in the evenings to finish it. But I am really enjoying it. I remember that it was really good, and that it was a close second for my favorite Dickens, just right behind A Tale of Two Cities. But I didn't really remember very much about it. I just knew a couple of details, and I remember that I really liked David Copperfield himself as a narrator, and especially as a first-person narrator. I feel like that can be a hard thing to do, and particularly to give a really honest view of the character and what's going on around them is hard in first person, because most of us are not honest about ourselves and what's going on around us. But I remember feeling that David is a really good narrator in that respect. So, but that was about it. I just remembered a couple small details. I really didn't even remember what the story was about for the most part. So it's been really great to revisit it, and just as good as I remember. There's just so much. There are also so many things I didn't catch when I was last reading it, because there's a lot of inference and subtlety in the way that Dickens communicates things, and that is sort of a whole other layer of enjoyment of reading it, is having to kind of figure these things out, and picking up on different things or whatever. And so I'm really, really enjoying this one. And again, I'm halfway through, and I remember a couple things that happen in the rest of the book, but even those I don't even necessarily know how they connect to the rest of the story. So it's almost like reading it for the first time. And it really is definitely making me want to revisit the rest of Dickens' works and read the few that I haven't read yet. So maybe I'll work on that now that I'm finished going through Jane Austen. Maybe that'll be my next project. But it's just, he was such a talented writer, and I don't know, I just really admire the way that he communicates what he wants to say. Just as a writer and a reader, like it's something that I really could appreciate and enjoy. So yeah, David Copperfield, so far still good, and that will probably still be my currently reading next week unless I can finish the rest really, really fast. So maybe I'll have more to say about it to y'all next episode. So number 6, a couple days ago was my 33rd birthday. So I had a really sweet day just with my family, mostly just eating my favorite foods and hanging out with my family, which is perfect. Like that's all my favorite things. So that was a sweet time, but also of course when it comes to like the closing of a year, you tend to kind of look back over everything that's taken place, since the last birthday. And it was really interesting for me this year because there are so many areas that I've grown in dramatically, and there are things that are sort of measurable, like not just like, I hope that like I've become a more patient person and things of that nature, but that's a little bit harder to really say, or to say, well, I am this much more patient now than I was then, or whatever. But the ways that I can really see standing out over the past year are things that you really can sort of quantify as specific amounts and areas of growth. So things like doing my devotions and Bible reading every morning, and a lot of things like that, like keeping, like how I keep up with my house and housework has, you can see specific areas like, well, now I do laundry every day, and now I actually clean the bathrooms each week or whatever. But one thing in particular, of course, has been my writing. And if you've been with me on this podcast for a while, you've been able to kind of see the progress of that in real time. And it really has been such a blessing to actually, really for the first time ever, be serious about my writing as a business and be really disciplined over time with it, because I would always have spurts of discipline where for a while I'd get more serious about it, but it never lasted long. And there were certain things I was afraid to do, like spend much money on promotions, or actually try getting into advertising, or just things that were holding me back that I was not willing to try. And so being able to try some of those things and having more of a big picture plan with my writing in general, and then for specific projects like my series, like having real direction and actual goals that I'm working toward daily, things like that. It's something that I haven't done much in the past, and certainly not sustained over, I think it was last June that I really kind of got serious. So, a few months will be coming in on a year. And that's just been amazing. It has been hard, and there have definitely been times where in the past I would have just tapered off because I get tired or discouraged, or whatever, depression comes along, whatever it is that used to always make me just kind of fall away from what I was trying to do. And I've pushed through it this past year, and that has been so valuable and rewarding, because then also, inevitably I get to the other side of those times of discouragement and am able to just stay on track with my goals because I am doing them whether I feel like it or not. And I have been able to actually see real, true growth in my goals, and also in the amount of income I'm bringing into my family, like so many wonderful things. And I'm sure I've talked about this before because it's been a huge factor in a lot of my growth in the past year, but I thought I'd mention the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm positive I must have mentioned it on the podcast before, but I just thought I would mention it again because I also just talked to someone a few days ago who had bought it on my recommendation, and that made me really happy because I think it can be there's a lot of beneficial, really practical things in it, especially when it comes to meeting goals and being who you want to be. And so, yes, that was a book I read early last year, and it was really impactful to me. And the number one thing there are a lot of, like I said, very practical pieces of advice and things to help you in building habits that you want to build and things like that in it. But the number one takeaway for me that has just stuck with me every single day and has really helped keep me on track with so many of these things is just this idea that every action you take is casting a vote for the kind of person you're going to be. So basically, if I say that who I want to be is a writer and a novelist and, self-published author or whatever it is, and yet my consistent actions are not demonstrating that, then I'm basically just voting to not be that. Like, I'm voting to be a person that scrolls through Facebook or just watches Netflix or whatever, which, not that obviously I'm not saying those things are bad, and I do plenty of that, but who do I want to be, like, in general? What do I want to be my defining characteristics as a person? And just keeping that in mind has helped keep me on track with my goals, because when I maybe don't feel like writing, or I don't feel like getting up in the morning to do my devotions, or I don't feel like vacuuming on Wednesdays when I'm supposed to, I can have that in my mind and I can say, I want to be a person who is a serious writer, or I want to be a person who keeps an orderly home, or a person that is serious in my walk with the Lord, or whatever it is. And if I'm saying that, if my actions are not backing it up, then I'm obviously not serious about it. And I knew those principles before, but for some reason, just putting it that way, just putting it in the words that my actions are casting a vote for who I want to be. And so if I am sitting and spending 30 minutes of my time mindlessly scrolling through Facebook, which can be a temptation for me, then I'm saying by my actions that what I really want to be is a person that just uses their time to scroll through social media. But that's not who I want to be. Like, at the core, like in my very heart, that is not who I want to be, and that is not what I want my life to be about. So why would I cast that vote, in a sense? And so, there are still plenty of times I waste time on Facebook, although I'm gradually getting better. But, and that's just one example. There are plenty of other things I do. And it also has applied to things like my diet. Like, do I want to be a person that has more energy and health and, is more, intentional about what I put into my body? Then I should not be sitting and eating this whole bag of M&Ms. I should just but then also, it's not just those discipline things, because also I really don't want to be a person that's super stressed about what I eat all the time. So I'm going to eat, a few M&Ms sometimes. Like, it's also not universal. Like, who you want to be is obviously different, because we're all different, and our callings from God and how we're created to be is all different.